Bella, my beautiful swan, you must choose me. I know it doesn't make sense, and I'm many, many decades older than you, but I am obsessed with you, so you must live with me for eternity. No, Bella, you gotta choose me. I've been in love with you since we were kids. I know it's been over a decade since we spoke or saw each other, but I still love you. No, Bella, can you choose me? How about you go to prom with me? You're like so gorgeous and so cool. I think I'm a Mary Sue. Hello, writer friends. My name is Elizabeth, and I would like to talk to you about Mary Sues. Or Gary Stews. You know, the type of character I'm talking about that's just perfect. You know, just to the point of being annoying. But first, right off the bat, I just want to get this out of the way. There have been some Mary Sue characters that I actually like. I'm not even going to tell you which ones. I will take that with me to the grave. But I have been known to enjoy a story every now and again that's just pure fluff and escapism, with a couple of gorgeous, perfect humans as the leads. Sometimes I just need that in my life, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to write a story like that, I say more power to you, because I'll probably read it. Okay, so now that I've gotten that off my chest, I would like to share with you 7 ways that I have found help me keep my characters in check so that I don't just end up writing one Mary Sue after another. These things work. If you're feeling a little worried, like maybe you wrote a Mary Sue on accident, but you're not quite sure, just apply these 7 steps to your story and you'll be golden. I promise. So, here we go. Number 1, not everyone should love them, or even like them, or agree with them. A best friend whose only purpose is to support the protagonist and say witty, edgy things is not only solidifying the poor protagonist as a Mary Sue, but they themselves are not a character at all. They're just the best friend. You know, a mere caricature. They don't have a real personality with goals and beliefs of their own, and that is the telltale sign of a Mary Sue. Your character cannot just be walking around with a bunch of supportive caricatures around them. Everybody in your story needs to have goals and beliefs of their own. The conflict of those beliefs is where you grow tension and develop theme. It's where the story comes from. Even characters on the same side as your protagonist should have a few differing beliefs or conflicting goals or certain characteristics that just don't really mesh well together, you know, like real human beings. That's what keeps scenes interesting and keeps your characters from becoming Mary Sues. Tip number 2. When other characters do like your protagonist, it needs to be evident to the reader why. Yeah, why do they like them? Your protagonist can't just walk into a room and have everyone gravitate towards them. If everyone wants to be your character's friend, we need to see that happen on the page. You know, why that is the case. Does she go out of her way to connect with people? Is she a natural peacekeeper or people pleaser? Why does everyone want to be her friend? If all the guys are fighting for her affection, we, the reader, need to understand why that is happening. Is she unusually charismatic? Perhaps naturally flirty and charming? That needs to come across on the page. We can't just be told that that's what's happening. Maybe she uses those traits to get what she wants and to push the plot forward. Do the men who fall in love with her turn angry or hurt when they realize that she doesn't feel the same way about them? Basically, I'm just trying to say that if something is a part of your story, then it has to affect the story. If everyone falls in love with your character, that has to be used in some way, explored in some way. It can't just be an accepted part of their character, because that makes them a Mary Sue, or a Gary Stew. Tip number 3. If your protagonist is not charming or personable or ambitious or creative or otherwise possessing qualities that typically draw others towards them, then they should probably have a hard time drawing others towards them. That could be an interesting character. Someone a little mean and negative and passive as your protagonist. How do they go about getting what they want? How do they even figure out what they want? What if what they want is to fall in love but nobody loves them? You know, I could get behind a story like that. But what I can't get behind is a negative Nelly character who actively tries to avoid everyone and yet is still somehow beloved by everyone that she meets. Why? You know, why do we see that character so often? Is it because authors assume that readers are, you know, indoors all the time, not meeting people, and they like to imagine themselves being able to just have everyone naturally fall in love with them despite them not doing anything to try? You know, maybe that's why I like Mary Sue's. But, you know, if you're trying to avoid it. Just something to keep in mind. Tip number 4. If you're worried your character might be a Mary Sue because you want them to be likable, so you didn't intentionally craft them with a bunch of glaring flaws, then don't panic. Typically, the main advice for preventing Mary Sues is to just give your characters flaws. But there is still a way to keep your character from becoming a Mary Sue without having to rewrite the entire story and have them be arrogant or careless or passive. The key to this is just viewing character traits on a spectrum. You know, the outright advice, fuck my elbow, of Creating characters that just have these flaws written in order to prevent Mary Sue's can really put the backs up of writers who are trying to write good, likable people. So it's likely that writers like that would just reject the advice to give all of their characters flaws because they feel like it doesn't apply to their character, who they want to be likable. Instead, I would suggest viewing your character traits on a spectrum. So if they are friendly and optimistic, try to imagine a scenario where that is not beneficial to your character. Maybe your character is so friendly and optimistic that they're uncomfortable with negative emotions. Maybe they not only ignore their own negative emotions, but also try to stop everyone around them from feeling negative emotions, which only ends up hurting them in the long run. Maybe your character is ambitious and constantly pushing the plot forward in pursuit of what they believe to be right. But that pursuit turns them into never being satisfied, either with themselves or with anyone else. Maybe your character is loyal to the point that they let other characters treat them poorly. Maybe they're compassionate and they end up taking on too much, refusing to accept help because they don't want to inconvenience others. Maybe they're brave, but it turns into them becoming reckless or unwilling to consider possible risks to their actions. You know, taking a positive trait and trying to include ways that that trait could harm them in the story. Tip number 5. If you've intentionally written flaws into your character, or you've included scenes where their positive characteristics have negative consequences, then it is important for your character to either admit to their mistakes or be called out on their behavior. Your character doesn't necessarily have to make an effort to change, although you might want them to if you're aiming for likable, but their mistakes and bad decisions need to be recognized in some way in the story. Either they admit that they're wrong or another character calls them out, or they fail so spectacularly that there's no way for them to hide their mistake. Any way you write it, it needs to be clear to your reader that some choice or trait belonging to your character leads them into being in a big predicament. That's all. Tip number 6. Make sure we get to see them struggle with some of their goals. Even if they ultimately achieve their goal, it's important that they don't succeed on the first try. Maybe a side character is more talented at some particular skill than the protagonist, but the protagonist really wants to be good at it. Let them come in second place. That only makes their ultimate success even more satisfying. If your character is given a quest of some kind, make sure they don't go down the list of tasks like a grocery list, checking off each thing they need to do before the final battle. We want to see them make mistakes and get outwitted and run out of time. That way, when they do ultimately achieve their quest, it's much more satisfying. Let your characters make choices that end up being the wrong ones, and leads them further from their goal. Not only will this help prevent a Mary Sue, but it will also help keep your overall story more engaging and less monotonous. You know, just having one thing after another. Success, success, success. There's no interest in that. Tip number 7. So it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is beauty. Is it bad to have beautiful characters? Are beautiful characters automatically Mary Sue's? You know, I don't think so. But I think their beauty needs to play a role in the story, just like anything else. If your character is unnaturally beautiful, then it would be unrealistic for them to not already be aware of this. If they're described as being plain and mousy with brown hair and brown eyes, but every person they meet just happens to fall in love with them, despite having the personality of a baked potato, then we probably won't believe that that character is average looking at all. Instead, if you want your character to be beautiful, then let them be beautiful and have it affect them. Maybe they're less likely to trust people since they don't know if they're only being pursued because of their looks. Maybe they use their good looks to get their way. Or maybe they go out of their way to tone down their looks in order to make other people more comfortable. You know, just anything, whatever matches their personality. If you don't want their beauty to play a role in the story, then just allow them to be an average-looking person who doesn't have a constant stream of characters fawning all over them. Those people can still go on adventures and fall in love, you know, most people are average-looking. It's okay to describe your characters as having some average-looking traits and then moving on if that's all you want. If you don't want their looks to impact the story, that's fine. Just make sure that their looks actually don't impact the story. As in, don't describe them as being average, only to have everyone else bend over backwards to be their friend. Unless they're rich or something, but that's a whole other story. Also, I do offer fiction editing on Fiverr, anything from short stories or single chapters to whole novels. If anybody has a story out there that they'd like for me to look at, please check out the link in the description box below. Thank you. Please like and subscribe.